Good afternoon and welcome, Sunflowers, to 78 Cards in 78 Weeks. I am Rosemary, and we are talking about the 10 of Swords this week. So glad that several of you have already popped in for our special guest today and to hear all about this happy, joyful card. Yeah, have some sarcasm with your Sunday afternoon. So before I introduce our guest and we hop into the card, I'll just let you know a little bit that's going on here. For some reason, I feel like I forgot to share this last week, although it's possible I said it and I didn't show you the graphic. I don't remember. My brain's playing tricks on me. But right now, the winter edition of the Cartomancer is on sale, so do check that out. It has my second article on the privilege of tarot in it, so be sure to check that out when it arrives this coming month. And that's really all that's going on, because Make Playing Cards is incredibly slow, as we all know. The crazy thing is I could drive to their factory and pick it up because it's that close to me. But, it still takes 3 weeks to get here after they print the label. I don't know why they print labels in advance and keep them around, just hanging around. It seems counterproductive to me. But anyway, maybe next week I'll be able to show you what I ordered for Make Playing Cards for everybody. And so we are going to introduce our guest. Our guest today is Jennifer Ball from Jennifer Ball's Witch House. Welcome, Jennifer. So glad you could be with us.
Hi, everybody. I hope I'm not too washed out here.
Oh, you're yeah, the light's a little bright, but we can see you.
Maybe
Um,
this is what I usually do. There we go.
oh,
Now we can, it's a little dark, but you can see me better.
sure. Well, oh, the Cartomancer magazine is here. Hello, welcome. Uh,
Ooh.
and So I met Jennifer at Northwest Tarot Symposium. And for some reason, we weren't already following one another. I don't know how that happened, but now we are. And so we chat
Yes.
almost every day on Instagram. So glad to have you here with us to talk about this very happy card.
Yeah.
Uh, I know this is a card that I know everybody dreads seeing, and I know I have dreaded having to create it because I had no clue where it would go. Because as much as I try not to follow exactly the Smith Waite image, because I want it to be personal to my life,
Mhm.
I find that with some cards, that's all I can think of. Right? Is the image that is in the Smith Waite card, and in this case, that person who has just been stabbed to death over and over and over again. A lot of people look at it and go, "Oh, it's Julius Caesar," it's the Ides of March. Da, 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 da. We'll talk some more about the symbols and meaning of that in a little bit. So Jennifer has gone through all of her decks this week, and she has found some cards to share with us. Why don't I let you go first this week instead of me and share a couple of the cards that you drew out?
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see. Well, one of the cards I pulled was from the Mibramig Tarot, which definitely shows this poor fella has been stabbed in the back mightily, which is a classic RWS.
Mhm.
Um, Something else that I pulled out actually from the little white book is the weight of worry, which is something I had not thought about with the swords, but it's true. The weight of worry, your brain can certainly feel like this. Definitely.
And that's something I've come up with in my reading several places as well, is this idea that this can really be all about our ideas, right? We're overwhelmed with ideas, or we're focusing too much on certain ideas, and our ideas don't win out. Like, I keep thinking about the election this week and how some people are feeling really let down and like the world is in ruins and everything's coming to an end. But this isn't all that this card is about. Not just the endings, as we see in
Right.
some of them. There is that glimmer of light or hope in the background, and we do see that even in an election cycle, and with the fact that we get another election in the U.S. In the coming weeks and months. So
Right.
I have the Fyodor Pavlov here, which is a little bit different take. I think the hope is there in the fact that he's still kneeling. He hasn't fallen completely collapsed. He's
Right.
taken on all of these swords, and he's still able to have a little strength there, which is an idea that is in the Smith Waite when you look at it. I hadn't really thought about it, but you see how he's making that hand sign. I mean, a person
Yeah.
who is completely dead would not have the strength to do that, right?
Right.
Uh, with all of that pain and everything. So definitely has a little bit of energy left there to work with, I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. One of the other cards I pulled was the Ten of Swords from the Chromatic Fates, which also kind of reminds me about, you can see the muscle in his arm, in their arm. They're just, holding his head. He's hanging on. He's not letting go. No matter how, as you can see from all the blood and everything, that how devastating it might be, he's like, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. So,
Yeah. I have a couple of others that kind of follow that Smith Waite idea of the swords in the back. Here is the Ellis deck, which is a lovely card. And then, of course, in the Spirit Keepers Tarot, she does the similar thing, except for you see the spirit that is there as well. She calls this the Destroyer, which kind of leads this idea of, to me, that I mentioned earlier in the week of, we can actually put some of those bad ideas to death ourselves when we see this card, right? It's not necessarily all about what's happening to us, but it could be about us putting an end to something, right?
Right.
That needs to die, that needs to end. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a lovely depiction.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. What else do I have here? Oh. So I have this Ten of Swords from the Cosmo Beings, where the last of this little Cosmo Being's tears, which is the red, are actually floating upwards, and you can see that the sun is starting to come out. So all hope is not lost. There is still hope there, even though you feel like you're down and out. Hope is still there. So
Absolutely. What's interesting is the last several cards you showed mimic that image I had in the Fyodor Pavlov, where the swords are in the back, but they're kneeling. And that's
yes,
actually almost what ended up happening with my card until I had that little spark of inspiration that I'll share in a bit. Jen is here from Ferocious Ink.
hey,
Welcome. She
hi
was here
Jen.
last week, and we talked about the Page of Swords. And oddly enough, I draw randomly, and the last 3 weeks we've dealt with swords every week. We had the king, then the page, and now we're on the 10.
I
Uh,
noticed I started binge watching.
yeah, and Amber actually will be here in December, so can't wait for that as well. Glad to have you here
Excellent.
today. There are some that kind of add a different take, like in the Sorcerer Bito, the swords are actually light. So the idea that it's temporary pain, that it's not going to last forever. It's not death. It's just the end of something at this time, and possibly it's a ending that needs to happen. That's going to bring something better to your life.
I think that's great.
And
Um,
that's also emulated in the Pocket of Peers, where they use acupuncture, kind of that idea of healing, which reminds me of the keyword that Benabel Wynn coined, or at least I've heard her say it more than anybody else, is this card is about catharsis, right? You like get to that point where things just can't get any worse, and then you learn from it and you start again. And, that kind of healing, so to speak, from the pain.
mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. Or as this is my vintage horror tarot. As you can see, we have the creature from the Black Lagoon here. But she's done. She's like, I just can't. But you see how he's cradling her. It's very gentle, and that there is still hope. There's someone there that maybe he's going to take care of her, or let her know that things are going to be okay, and that she should just rest right now from being overwrought or scared to death, as seeing the creature from the Black Lagoon just kind of passing out. So, yeah.
In the slow tarot, there is this idea of a home invasion to me, because there is the open window in the background, and we begin to see all these
Oh,
birds flying in the window. And birds are something that I see a lot of in the Ten of Swords in my collection, specifically because they're associated with air, right? That whole flying thing. And I actually have several cards that feature birds. Um, in very different and unique ways. One being the New Era Elements, where we see the vultures and picking the bones. And there's this idea which now I need to grab my cell phone because I print screened it to share today. That just because something is ending doesn't mean it's over. And the idea that the dead become food for the vultures or for the earth and that type of thing. Let me just pull this up real quick.
Hmm.
And I think it's this one. Yeah. So it's actually, I think, a tweet that someone posted on Facebook, but it says, tell me your favorite weird fact. Well, this is the weird fact. The earth is covered in corpses. We breathe the air the dead exude, eat the food they nourished with their decay, pour their remains into our cars, wear them and sleep on them, and then we call them scary without even noticing that they are present in every single thing of our lives. We live because of the dead. So there's that idea that endings bring with them a new beginning, that whole cycle of life thing.
I absolutely love that. Where did you get that from again?
It was a print screen that someone posted on Facebook. I'll
Okay.
send it to you on
Yes,
Instagram so you can see it. But
please.
and we even see in the Bone Stone and Earth Flesh that's depicted with the birds eating the corpse that's actually died. And I think 1, 2, 3, yeah, there's actually 10 birds there
Mm-hmm.
versus say swords.
Right.
And at first it's a very gory image, but I don't know, something is aesthetically pleasing about it. I guess because it seems more real to me than say all of the swords in the back, because we don't tend to see people fighting with swords
Right.
nowadays. Right. But we
Exactly.
might see birds picking at the flesh,
Right.
or that type of thing.
And
And
that's very interesting because I was just looking through my stack here. I don't have a single deck that has a bird in it.
wow.
Yeah.
This is the last one that I had with the bird that I wanted to show. This is the Mystic Garbage Tarot, which it's a very specific taste. And I have that taste every about once a month or so where I just want to play with it. But this is actually a tattoo that the artist got a long time ago before she ever started this deck.
Oh, wow.
And this deck really focuses a lot on her personal experience in life with abuse and various other things, anxiety and that type of trauma. And this idea in the Ten of Swords here is this bird, which has fallen, who may have a broken wing or may be dead, on the side of the road like we do. And in fact, now that I'm thinking about it, somewhere I have a deck that the Ten of Swords, I believe, is a possum on the side of the road. Or maybe
Well,
it may be the death card in this one, but
I actually
yeah.
have one that is this is the Trash Panda tarot, and
Okay.
it shows the poor raccoon has been just left, but as you can see, friends memorialize because animal control didn't care to pick him up off the pavement, so now he's being surrounded by this memorial.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one
Right.
more animal. This is the 5 cent tarot. They used a porcupine, which made total sense to me, or a hedgehog, because of their spikes. Is an interesting association with that card as well. We have a lot of people hopping in here. Lisa Rhodes is here. Jonathan Daly has popped in. Jonathan will be here in 2 weeks to share 78 cards in 78 weeks with us. I
Yay.
think there are some people checking it out so they know what they're in for
They're in
this
for a
week.
lot of fun. That's what they're in for, a lot of fun. So, yeah.
So, I have a few more cards here that, in fact, one of them, we've already talked about it backstage, was one of the ones that you had pulled as well. And it actually doesn't have swords. She calls them think, and she associates them with light bulbs, ideas, as it were. And, here, all of our ideas have fallen apart. Um, and there's actually this semblance or idea in some of these cards that is very close to like the Nine of Swords. In the Lost Hollow, we see it as
Oh,
well. That
wow.
anxiety um, that we often see depicted in the Nine. And there's an interesting quote that Benabel mentions in her video on the tens about the swords. And I forget what book she got it out of, but basically they're saying everybody thinks the Ten of Swords is the worst card in the deck, but it's not. The Nine is the worst card in the deck.
Yes.
Nine is when you're feeling all of that pain and that
Yes.
anguish. The 10 is when it's been fulfilled, when it can't get any worse and you can start something new, right?
Right.
And so, oh, Jonathan says the Brady Tarot has a possum pretending to be dead on the Ten of Swords. That's great. That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Have
I
some other
have,
cards?
well, I have this one from Tarot at the End of the Rainbow, which you can see she does have the swords in her, but she's being raised up by the rainbow. You know, it's not over. It's just temporary. Hang on. We've got you here where the rainbow is supporting. So I really liked that uh, depiction. And then the other, uh, this one is kind of interesting. This is from the Cute and Creepy Tarot. Um, she does have the swords in her back, but she also has the one in her heart as well, because her lover apparently has taken one of the knives and slashed her mouth. And it's, you know, no one's going to love you because you're ugly now, kind of
Wow.
thing. Yeah, wow.
It's a
Isn't that
very cute
something?
image to be so dark.
Right? Right? Very cute image to be so dark. And then I have two abstracts. One is from the Lost Forest, where you can see that an asteroid has hit the planet. There is destruction up into the cosmos, but we also know that from this destruction comes regeneration, and renewal. Um, so I thought that was rather interesting take on it. And the last one I have, which is really kind of creepy and out there, is from the Gnostic Tarot. And this man is just, he's caught between two boulders. He can't seem to get out. Um, I pulled something here from the book itself. This one was so interesting. I actually went to the book on it. This is like the ego. That's it. It talks about it as the ego. Um, and the name of the painting is called Wanderlust. And he's incapable of going anywhere, doubtful of you know, that he has any feelings, and that he's just kind of behind the eight ball. Uh, very profound painting to look at, and I'm sure I could get more out of it even if I stared at it.
Sure. This is one of the few. I have a couple of cards here where we don't actually see swords in people, which is
Ooh.
interesting. So this is the Tarot of the Toiling Hands, which is called the Mother of the End, and the swords are all there, but they didn't actually,
Pierce, they're all just
pierce the
pointing at it.
person. So this idea that they're in her head, right? They're ideas that are coming at her or haunting her, so to speak. And there's our little crow or raven. I started calling it a craven. See, I prefer crows. Other people prefer ravens. So when you see them, nobody ever can tell you which one's which, unless it's an actual photograph, right? It's like when they
Right.
draw them, it
That's
could be either, So,
exactly,
but yeah.
exactly.
This card actually doesn't show the swords piercing anyone. It's actually the swords that are broken. The
I liked
ideas
I liked
that are
that
dead,
idea.
right? That didn't work out, that didn't get fulfilled. The political interest that didn't succeed in the last election or debate, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, but then there's that butterfly emerging, right? That hope, that hope as well.
Right. The hope at the top.
And then I don't know why, but I keep pulling cards from this deck since I got it, even though it's no longer Halloween. It's the Trick or Treat Tarot. And I just love this. This is like, I have a newfound understanding of this card. We're going to put the thing to death. That idea that doesn't serve us. It is over. It is done with. And yeah, so I really like this. That giant doll there being poked, and I can just see that would be me. I'm gonna. It's got to go. It's got to die.
That's right. That's right. That is a giant, it looks like a giant voodoo doll, and I
It
love it.
does.
I love it. The Trick or Treat Tarot is fantastic. It's one of my favorites as well.
It really is great. It's my first Halloween themed deck. I've looked at Halloween themed decks for years and not found one that I was really pulled towards until this one, and it just kind of clicked for me.
Wow, that's awesome. Yay. I'm excited. Anytime someone finds a Halloween deck that they enjoy, I'm excited.
Right. Jonathan says I just use Corvid because it'll apply to crows or ravens. And I get that. I actually did that earlier this week online, but wasn't
All
in
right,
my brain
Jonathan,
this morning.
if you want to be extra, Jonathan, okay.
Um, and so I thought we'd start our discussion about the meaning of the card and the symbols of the card by reading what A.E. Waite said about it. He said a prostrate figure pierced by all the swords belonging to the card. So the 10 swords. Whatsoever is indicated by the design. So yeah, so use your intuition, people. Use your intuition. Also pain, affliction, tears, sadness, desolation. It is not especially a card of violent death. And then he goes on for the reverse and says advantage, profit, success, favor, but none of these are permanent. Also power and authority. And so, and that kind of really sums up everything that I have learned about this card. There are people who don't really see it in reverse as a positive card. But I like what Rachel Pollack said in her book. I think it was her book where I saw it. But when you turn it upside down, the swords all fall out, right?
Right.
And so it's you let go of those things that are holding you down and you're able to move forward. And so, but even if it's whether it's upright or it's reverse, I feel like that it's true that this is a temporary state. This is a minor arcana card, right? This is not a major arcana card. So this isn't permanent. You're not going to be in this situation forever.
Yep.
It's going to have its time in your cycle of life, so to speak.
Absolutely. And thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I've got some very intense decks. This is true.
Yeah, I have a few, but I tend to go with things that are more middle of the road. I'm finding I'm more a middle of the road person than either extreme fluffy love and light or the dark side,
Right. Well, I wanted to bring some unusual decks that most people don't generally see. So
absolutely. Well, we've talked a lot about endings and disaster or defeat that we see in the card. There's also this idea of victim mentality, like, this is all in our head, all of these ideas about ourself, right? We're
Right.
self-defeating a little bit, although I tend to associate that more with the eight, but still, there's even more swords than there were in the eight, right? That are
Hmm.
holding us down.
Well, the eight is like, I look at the eight as the start, and then, then you get to the nine, and the 10 is full on, it builds from the eight.
I'm just reading some of the comments. They're talking about ravens, and Tara is reminding everyone to purchase responsibly and know your limits. You don't have to have all the decks, although from the looks of it, I'm getting there, right? So in the Terre de Marseille, some of the traditional meanings of this card are obsession, which, that idea of like this same idea over and over, perhaps, right? That you're really focused on. This idea of secrets, which is also something that we kind of saw in the Page of Swords, this idea of seeking out knowledge and information. And here, how did I do that? Oh, there we go. This idea of information again, because these are the swords, this is your communication suit. Also suspicion, so, thinking lots of things about people. This is your card of conspiracy theory in the Terre de Marseille, which makes a lot of sense because those people who are prone to secrets and suspicion and that type of thing tend to end up being dealt the repercussions of that, right, from the people that they're spying on.
Oh, yeah.
So here we see the outcome of spying on other people, really. Let's see. Yeah, so Ferocious Ink said that she thinks the Ten of Swords is maybe one of the stage cards. So this is a person who is being overly dramatic.
Okay.
And that is actually an idea that came up in a lot of my reading is, a person being over dramatic.
I had to pull this out. This is the Wonder World Tarot, and it's Humpty Dumpty. Talk about being overly dramatic, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, Terra Stash. We don't have to have them all. We just want them all.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely.
So, and there's this idea to me here that we're looking at from zero to hero, right? Because we're going from the end to, there's a glimmer of hope there. Like this card really is about what do we do when we get to that point, when we realize that, things are as bad as they're going to get. Do we start getting up like we've seen in some of the cards and move on? Or do we just give up, And the hope of this card is that we keep going. There is that sun in the background. And whether you think it's setting or it's rising, the same truth applies, right? The cycle continues. There's going to be another day, whether it's setting or it's rising. It's going to come back. Yeah, so there's this idea that I mentioned earlier. Benabel Wynn was mentioning in her video from something she was reading, where this card is not necessarily the worst one. The 9 is. Well, the second part of that is that this card is really the rain on your parade card. So if all of your other cards are like positive, it's going to rain on that parade, right? It's going to bring them down a little bit. It's not necessarily the worst card, but it's definitely going to put a downer on everything else around it, was the idea that they had. And I can't help but keep thinking about, and maybe it's because it was this week here in the US, but this idea of politics, and the election and the ideas and how like Some people are just feeling like the world has come to an end after the results. And, you know, of course, then they'll pick themselves up and they'll say, okay, no, we've got to work hard for the next one. That little ray of light there that's in the back, you know, kind of thing. And I like it when the cards relate to things that are going on in the world around me when I draw them.
Uh-oh.
We're
Uh-oh.
working the world and what's going on in the world. And this week has been the World Week for me. So let's talk a little bit about the reverse side. We did mention what Rachel Pollack said, but what are your thoughts on the card when it's in reverse? Do you work with reversals?
I do not work with reversals. Okay. Yeah, no, I can pretty much get an idea of good or bad, of course, depending upon the surrounding cards, the situation, the question, all of those things combined. Oh, you're freezing on me, Rosemary.
See this card in a shadow side. Like when you're thinking, oh, well, it's not necessarily the end of things. What might be the things that you think about?
Well, I think about, you know, rejuvenation, regeneration. I just hold that thought. Yeah, regeneration, rebirth.
It's interesting that you use those words because that takes me into my next segment, which is a little about blood, as I read about in Jennifer Steedley's guidebook to Tarot Disassembled, is about regeneration, and it's about vitality, and it's about you know, that healing aspect, right? It means that there's it's proof of life, right? It symbolizes life force, and so yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about that hand symbol. A lot of people look at it and immediately go, "Oh, that's the sign that's being made in the Hierophant." And some people even will say, "This is the Hierophant." If you look at the clothing, it's very similar colors, and this is, you know, that false religion being put to death, and or those false ideas, right? But then some people look at that hand sign and see a mudra. And I've actually seen two different descriptions of the mudra, both of which seem applicable to this card. In the one hand, they say some people will say it's the mudra for return. So, like, this person has had the energy to make the sign saying, yeah, you stabbed me in the back, but I'm coming back. Right?
That's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah, it was the first for me too.
That's fascinating.
And then the second, of course, is wisdom, which is basically how we define this sign, I think, that the Hierophant makes. And this idea that I've learned from this experience. Yes, you got me. I'm at my end at the moment, but I've learned something. And I'm going on. And so those are some of the main symbols that I wanted to look at in the card. Are you ready to look at what I did?
Yes.
Okay. So some of you have already seen it. If you haven't, that's because you were not following me in all the right places.
Yes.
So don't forget to go to the Linktree link in the description box below and check out my TikTok. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just me being happy with what I've done, but I have to go through all of my cards on TikTok every week when I post the new one. I just love how the music lines up with the card's energy. It's really cool for me anyway. And so, and you also can join the Good Journeys into Tarot group where we actually will talk about the card during the week some. And I'll show probably on Thursday or Friday what I'm thinking about for the card. And people will give input. Like this week, Jennifer Steedley made a great observation, which led to me updating the card. And in weeks past, Gerald from Tarot Stash has had a huge influence on one of my cards. Interestingly, they both were traditionally very negative cards, the Ten of Swords and Death, where I got some really good feedback that, I'm sorry, the Devil. It was the Devil and the Ten of Swords. So, yeah, it's always great to have input. Before we look at what I actually did, I'm going to show you the first attempt I made at doing a Ten of Swords. This was back a couple of years ago. I started a project where I was doing a photo a day tarot deck. I don't have as many of those cards finished now as I have for my current deck. But I did do the Ten of Swords. And so this was my idea back then was, feeling at death's door, the morning after, right? You see all the little swords from previous drinks there, and then the
It's
current drink with the new sword in it, the final one and the nail in the coffin, so to speak.
yeah,
Um, well, that was a playful idea that, as I was sitting there thinking, what could be a Ten of Swords in my everyday life? And I was having a martini, and I was like, okay, I'm going to scatter these swords here and make this my 10. But excess, that idea, that the excessive ideas. And I've come to understand tens a little differently. Usually people say tens are about completion, but I think it's more about fulfillment. And the reason I say that is because it's not all positive. It could be negative or positive depending on what you have too much of, right?
that's true.
And
Absolutely.
so I like the idea of fulfillment more than completion, simply because completion implies it's an end, whereas to me, fulfillment means that what you've done so far has come to fruition, whether that's for the good or the bad. I don't know. Um, that was just my thoughts. So I, whoops, come on. Oh, I went the wrong direction. That's why. Let me just, there we go. All right. So this was the first image that came to my mind. I wanted to relate it to a personal experience. And I was trying to think about a time when I felt like the end was nigh. And the closest I could come up with was, besides that morning after the martinis, would be, um, I had acid reflux for a while, and I had like this incredible pain at night where I couldn't even sleep, right? And I'd be like clenched over, holding my stomach and thinking I'm dying. And so I decided to look for a person that looked like they were in pain, because I felt like that's something that needed to be visible in the card, was pain.
Hmm.
And then the red was that idea of blood that we talked about earlier. And then I was like, okay, well, what's the sun in this image, right? And so I added the heartbeat, that idea that, yeah, you're down, but you still have a pulse.
Right. Right.
And
Now,
and this was the initial image. This is how the images came from the Creative Commons imagery that I'm using. And then I started playing with them a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe it should be yellow, which Tony from Antoinette's Intuitive Tarot and Jewelry loved, because it is associated with, sorry, yellow. Can't tell my colors. With the suit, right? But
right.
then I thought it kind of blended in too much, and I changed it to green, thinking about growth. But ultimately, I did go back to the yellow. So I did play a little bit with the color of that heartbeat, and decided on the yellow because it was reminiscent of the sun and of the suit itself. And then Jennifer Steedley was like, well, since this is the Ten of Swords, wouldn't it be cool if it had 10 beats on it, right? Instead of just the one big one with the couple on the side. And so I just extended it this morning, counting the ups and downs in the pulse. There are 10 there, so there's 10 points now, which I like that idea. And then, of course, my conundrum is always okay, which way should it go? Because aesthetically, which would look better? I
I
think
say
I like it on
left.
the right. I liked the left, but then Tony was pointing out that she liked the right. And as I think about it, I kind of like it because the largest heartbeat is on the far end, right? So it's not at the beginning. So it looks like things are not going so well until all of a sudden, here we are.
Right.
It's not actual end. So yeah, so that was the concept. That's what I ended up with. Um, and as always, if anybody has any thoughts for improvement, for what they liked or didn't like, I'm always open to that from people online as well as live today.
Well, I absolutely loved this card. Um, it went straight to my heart for so many reasons. Definitely, the you can, even without seeing a face on the person, you can tell by the way the body is positioned, the pain it's causing. And then the heartbeat. I love the connection between the finality and then uh, it's like, I don't know, it almost signifies the walk between life and death, in some fashion. It's like, um, and it's like you said, fulfillment, whether good or bad. Um, it that's what it shows. So I absolutely love the card.
Well, thank you. Um, so while I get out our last 18 cards to shuffle for next week, when Barrett Urmi will be joining me, I met him at Stockholm. Gotta love the fur babies.
Fur
Do
baby woke
you have
up.
anything coming up on your channel that you want to tell us about, or anything you're
Well,
working on?
I have nothing really that I'm working on. I'm still waiting on like 20 decks from Kickstarter to show up. They are coming very slowly these days. Um, but I am going live again today at 3 p.m. Pacific time. That would be 6 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to be on the Sabbath Social YouTube channel. And it's going to be Crones Around the Cauldron. So there's going to be like 5 or 6 of us, all over the age of 40. I'm pretty sure most of us are well over the age of 50. Um, but yeah, we're gonna have a little witchy chat with crones around the cauldron over at the Sabbath Social YouTube channel. So I
All right.
have that coming up, and then next week I'm also a practicing Buddhist. So I we have a YouTube channel that's called Rising Lotus Sangha, and we'll be doing a live over there next week as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Well, wonderful. Glad you're keeping busy and getting to talk with others about the things that interest you.
Yeah,
I
me
enjoy
too.
doing that as well. So at any point anybody wants me on their channel, let me know. I'll be there with you. All right. So next week with my guest Barrett Ermy, we're going to be talking about, and I've started fanning them out because I've decided cutting 18 cards just doesn't work right for me for some
Right.
reason. It's too few, I
Is
guess.
it another
Is
sword?
Oh, it is the Six of Cups, our card of nostalgia. So, of these 18 cards, I have already designed 4 of them, 3 which are finished, including this one. So, this will be kind of a little bit of a laid back week for me because I had already been inspired as to what I wanted for this card and have already finished it. In fact, Jennifer Steedley's already seen it when we were backstage last week. And now everybody else will get to see it finally. I've been so excited to talk about this card and show you guys this card and tell you my story. Because all of these cards are supposed to relate to my personal life. And I've always had this scene for this particular card in mind. So I can't wait to share it with everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Next week, again, is Barrett Ermy. And then 2 weeks from now, I'll be with Jonathan Daly. He'll be getting message from me shortly to get some information. And until then, good journeys.